All right, thank you so much, everyone, for coming tonight. So, we find ourselves now in the second year of a war which we are funding to the tune of billions. Now, I looked up some official statistics. According to some official data, we were funding the war in Ukraine to a tune of $75 billion. Before I continue, can I just see a show of hands? Who thinks that the war in Ukraine is completely justified, and who does not? We'll say totally justified or not justified. Okay, so let the record show that the vast majority, I didn't see a single hand for justified. Has anyone heard an argument from any of our elected officials as to what the goal of this war is and why is it beneficial to the United States? Anybody raise your hand if you heard a convincing explanation? All right, we have Mike Bartels.
Oh, you said convincing explanation.
Okay, so look, only one hand was raised and it was in confusion. All right, so I think that it's fair to state that the American people have a lot of questions surrounding this war in Ukraine. Why are we involved? And I'd like to remind the listeners here, the United States is the new kid on the block. Yes, we have our hand raised.
I hope to ask a secondary question.
Well, we will take questions at the end, so hold your question.
Okay.
This is the introduction, but thank you. I like you're eager. I appreciate that. We will have a question and answer session. So ultimately, I think that the United States, which is supposed to be representative of the people, the stakeholders of the United States, we are without an explanation of why we are spending so much treasure in this conflict. Furthermore, why do we care so much about Ukraine? This is also a question that I don't think most people could, in fact, the vast majority of people, even seasoned academics at Georgetown, could provide a satisfactory answer for. That's why we meet here tonight. Because here we are, we find ourselves committed to a conflict that it cannot be satisfactorily defined why we're in it other than Russia is some boogeyman. And as I was about to state, the United States is a new kid on the block, historically speaking. We have China, Russia, other powers around the world that I say deserve a little bit of respect, mutual respect in foreign diplomacy. Imagine if Russia was knocking on the doors in Cuba. What would our reaction be? Well, we know exactly what our reaction would be. It would be escalating to the brink of nuclear war. So I think a little bit of conversation among American people is warranted on this topic. I think we are owed an explanation about why we are so involved in this conflict. And I hate to say it, but it seems like there's something that doesn't pass the smell test. It seems like we might be involved in this as a party to a inauthentic, or let's just say less than virtuous motivation that is kept secret from us. So tonight, in the spirit of truth and justice and finding out what really is going on, I have invited two upstanding Americans to help shed light on this, Simona and George Papadopoulos. George especially has been singled out by the deep state for his supposed Russia collusion. And Simona has done fantastic work abroad in digging as a real journalist, searching for the truth, not trying to sling mud, not calling people agents of the Kremlin, but just asking questions. So tonight I'm very happy to present to you our program. It will begin with Simona Papadopoulos presenting some of her findings, and then we'll have a question and answer session where George will kick it off, and the audience can ask the couple. By the way, we love married couples here in the New York Young Republican Club. Marriage is very important to us. For those that are single, mingle. Don't be shy. At any rate, so that's our program for tonight. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, allow me to introduce Simona Papadopoulos.
Thank you so much. It's an honor today to be here, and I would like to thank in particular Jan for giving us the chance and the platform to discuss this work. But before even starting talking about work, I would like to introduce a little bit myself. Some of you has known me in some propaganda tabloid for being a Russian national, sometimes even called a Russian agent. Just because I came into my husband's life in a very specific time when he was working, actually when Trump won the election, he was one of the people who helped Donald Trump to win them. He was his advisor. So I had this incredible privilege to meet him at this specific time of my life, and at the same time, the unfortunate circumstance of become myself the target of the same deep state that was targeting everybody in the Trump campaign, including relatives, friends, and wives of their advisors. But let's go back 1 second on who I am. I'm actually an Italian citizen at origin. I'm an American as well right now, so I'm very honored to be an American. But my entire legal career, my entire professional career is in law. I'm an attorney. I worked for the European Parliament for 7 years. My entire professional life has been dedicated to politics. I advised leaders. I drafted, amended legislative proposals, and that's when I became aware of my political values that roots in conservative movements. Why I came to this realization is because there is only 3 pillars there that any healthy society can be grounded upon, and these are God, family, and country. Because if we don't believe in God, if we don't honor and protect our families, and we were talking about marriage, the importance of marriage, if we don't protect and honor our country as well, then we can only go back forward. So the only way to really be progressive today is to be conservative and not to question what is your pronouns, so what is your gender. This is actually going back forward to primitive times, not moving toward healthy society. So because on 2016, I was still working for the European Parliament when Donald Trump ran his first presidential campaign. At this time, I hadn't met George yet, but still, my pinned tweet was, I wish Europe had a leader like Donald Trump. Trump charisma, vision, straightforward messaging, and most importantly to me, its unconditional love for his country wasn't the reason why today, still as in 2016, is the one and only that can bring America back to be great again. When I met George, a few months later his election, I immediately recognized in George a winner, not only simply because of the man and the president he supported, but also for the values embraced. We were dating for not a long time before the Russia madness hits our life. I became a target as well of this madness to give George a voice when they took it away from him. The same perverted agenda that made of Russia, 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 the phony mantra to delegitimize Trump campaign, was going against everybody around Trump, including me at the time, when I've been portrayed as a Russian agent, despite, of course, my nationality and my uncontrovertibly clear background. I'm a lawyer, nobody ever talked about it. But this is exactly the moment when I realized that I should put my legal background at the services of investigative journalism and expose the truth behind the lies. When I start to dig into allegation of election interference in 2016 presidential election, I found out that if any country had an interest into interfere into American election and promote a particular candidate, this country was Ukraine, was not Russia. And the candidate was in 2016 Hillary Clinton, and later on, Joe Biden in 2020. Our president, if we want to call him this way, Joe, was already very active in the region of Ukraine back in 2014 when he was using his political leverage as vice president of the United States under Obama to first enrich his family by having his son Hunter appointed as board administrators of a foreign company called Burisma. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Burisma. I think many of you have heard about that. Where he was sitting with this incompetent professional profile for the job for around $80,000 a month. Burisma was not only a foreign company, the son of the vice president of the United States was sitting and becoming rich from, but it was also a company involved in money laundering, a very corrupted company that used a different scheme for provide wealth unlawfully, so infringing the law multiple times in different ways. In 2014 already, Joe Biden was visiting Ukraine many times. How many leaders in this country today visited Ukraine so many times? Think about the timing, think about 2014. We're talking about at the eve of the first presidential election. So we have these visits of Joe Biden at the same time that his son is appointed at the board administrator of Burisma. Then we have an unfortunate prosecutor named Shokin, was general prosecutor of Ukraine, who decided to open an investigation on Burisma. It's a prosecutor job to look at the wrongdoing of a company. But only a few months after his work had started, we have Joe Biden calling former president of Ukraine, Poroshenko, bribing him with $1 billion of your taxpayers' money, my taxpayers' money, American taxpayers' money, to stop the investigation, to actually get fired from his position, making up the international lie that Shokin was so corrupted that the vice president of the United States felt the urge to intervene and put his business in the affairs of a foreign country up to provoke this general prosecutor to be removed. Now, even if I wanted to believe this lie, Shokin didn't have the material time to become corrupted in 6 months, right? So, many facts and evidence and contradict each other, but most importantly, at the same time that Joe Biden bragged openly in a press conference about having the general prosecutor looking into Burisma fired, we have an Ukrainian parliamentarian whose name is Andriy Derkach, who has been portrayed, mischaracterized to the European, Western media, European American media as a Russian asset now, that actually in the context of his work to out corruption in Ukraine, shared with the US government, in particular with Rudy Giuliani, eminent attorney, some fact of corruption where the name of the Bidens came up into light. How many of you remember about the story of the audio recordings leaked by Andriy Derkach? I don't know how many, if you're familiar with that. Do you know about this infamous piece of evidence already buried for a long time? How many of you knows about that? So let me then dig into that. I'm pulling some documents here. So Biden, it was 2020 when Biden, in view of his presidential campaign, couldn't afford the scandal of his own involvement with a foreign company implicated in heavy money laundering, right? So he instructed the one that was the former president of Ukraine, Poroshenko, to fire the general prosecutor investigating Burisma, which was the company where Hunter was working. And the only open evidence we have about it is him bragging openly in a press conference about these things. Do you remember the time when Trump challenged the Ukrainian government to disclose Biden affairs over there? Do you remember when he said Ukraine?
Impeachment number one.
Yes. Exactly. Perfect. So this is exactly what happened. Donald Trump was aware of what was going on there, and they challenged. And as a result, he was threatened to be impeached, number one. At the same time, Ukrainian parliamentarian that I mentioned before, Andriy Derkach, who served Ukraine for 7 mandates, longtime specialized in the fight against corruption, provided to Rudy Giuliani a further evidence of what Trump was looking for. And actually, he leaked these audio recordings along with official documents, including court orders and wire transfers, proving at the time the corruption of Burisma and the fact that Joe Biden tried to cover up for this corruption by using American taxpayer money to bribe the former president. We have another conversation leaked as well. This is the famous first audio recording. So you have a second audio recordings in which Poroshenko tells Joe Biden, don't worry, Joe, there is no corruption of Shokin whatsoever, but I will fulfill your will. And this man will be fired. So simply because, I own you. And that's how, and the time when Joe Biden sold this country, United States of America, to a foreign country, which owns us all because it's leverage. Having leverage means knowing exactly the wrongdoing, accepting bribing, and holding piece of documents that are compromising. So how many of us are really aware that the person sitting at the White House right now is owned by the same country to who today we are sending billions of dollars to fund a war we have absolutely no interest into? Not many of you knew about Ukraine. Probably 2 years ago, nobody knew about Ukraine, right? Ukraine is not a member of NATO. Ukraine is not a member of the European Union either. So it's not even a member of a union allied with the United States. But for some odd magical reasons, it's deserving of our tax money much more than our borders, and much more our emergencies here with homeless people and inflation of any kind that we're facing, and every day living in despair, having the country in a crescendo of decline. But we never ask ourselves why. Why we keep talking about Russia? Why we keep rehearsing the mantra that every piece of evidence that is compromising Biden or his son, including his laptop, might be some sort of production of Russian propaganda, or every single people investigating into this crime. Let's remind about Rudy Giuliani. Rudy Giuliani was actually talking about, as a man of law, starting an investigation into these documents, piece of evidence provided by the Ukrainian parliamentarian Derkach on the wrongdoing of Biden's family in Ukraine. As a result, two things happened. Actually, three things happened. Impeachment number one. Then we have the Giuliani disbarred, accused of being an Ukrainian agent, and a thorough investigation opened against Giuliani, and a foreign national, Andrei Derkach, Ukrainian parliamentarian, sanctioned by the United States and openly listed as a Kremlin asset. Okay, so what does this story tell us? To me, it tells you one thing, that we are not investigating crimes, we are persecuting people that conflict with a narrative. That there is no democracy, there is no rule of law, there is no protection. When we go against the agenda that the deep state decide to push forward, we become targets. Targets like my husband, my most famous husband, George Papadopoulos, was was target of, back on 2016, Donald Trump in first place, General Flynn, and Roger Stone, Paul Manafort, and every other names. That shows you one thing. It's not about crimes. It's about the man. When you point at the man, they find the crime, if they don't like you. So I think it's kind of time that we start to speak out. We start to take back our rights, constitutional rights, to have our institution working for us and not working for an agenda, to have our FBI agent looking into information like the one Derkach was providing, rather than accusing Giuliani here in the film of being interviewed by Chanel Rion, at the time was working on the same film as I did and worked also on the Derkach tape. So we need to bring this back. How we bring this back is through facts, to evidence, and not falling for the threats of being targeted or prosecuted, or better, persecuted, simply for outing the facts of corruption that the Biden's family is responsible of. Coming back to my work about Ukraine, I filmed the first documentary. I was very honored to be chosen to put my legal background as a lawyer at the service of investigative journalists and work into outing crimes by exposing crimes as well in a cinematic way through these films. There is no better way to tell stories than do it through a screen. Sometimes we write articles, don't have articles nobody read. We have to go through the selection of news network, which has most of the time echo chamber as well to their own narrative, but we need as well to vehicle a message and present evidence through one single method, and I think filmmaking is important. I was chosen to be interviewer of The Everlasting Present, the film we are seeing here. This was a film about the 30 years of independence of Ukraine from the collapse of the European Union, and it is Soviet Union, sorry. But it was, European Union is becoming kind of it's a Freudian mistake. I think European Union is becoming sort of Soviet Union as well, so maybe I'm not completely wrong. So I was chosen to be part of this film, which is a part of a trilogy of, I don't know if you ever heard about Ukraine on Fire, Revealing Ukraine with Oliver Stone. Now, I'm not as good as Oliver Stone, but I filmed the third part of this trilogy. And already at this stage, the war didn't start yet, but we come and see one name in my investigative job comes up multiple times, and this name is always Joe Biden. Because you have to remember, nobody cares about what happens over Russia, over Ukraine, if it's not because how this impacts our lives. And the only way I see this impacting our life is based on this incredible amounts of money, taxpayers' money, we are funding for a war that is just weakening America and the West, and it has a short-sighted political agenda, very short-sighted political view, probably dragging the world in a nuclear reaction, escalation, we don't know. But all I know is that there is one reason why Ukraine got all this money, and this war started when Joe Biden was in power, is because if Donald Trump was in power, this would never ever happen. And not because Donald Trump likes Putin or because Donald Trump has anything to gain, simply because he's a smart leader, is what we need, and also because he's not compromised. The deep state doesn't like uncompromised people. The only thing they can do is resurrect story of a zombie like Jen Carroll to make up lies. That's the only thing they can find about you, but they won't dare put their nose in what real Joe Biden is doing. I always say when we want to look at motives, it's legal, actually, the root of every legal strategy, follow the money. Who has been becoming rich through Ukraine? Biden's family. Biden's family is no business family. They become very rich through America. Their American dream is called Ukrainian dream. That's how they became millionaire. And how they're paying back. They're paying back with our tax monies. I don't know you, I pay taxes due on time every year. And you know what? It sickens me to see this money going to fund the war in Ukraine and not to the border. And seeing fake... Thank you. And seeing this fake prosecution, our entire institution weaponized to one end. Hunter Biden testified to the House of Intelligence Committee only a few days ago, on February 28th, and reading his testimony already caught him in multiple lies. He first and foremost, and he said also very funny things that I would like to quote. He said that this Burisma story is just the fantasy of MAGA lunatics, conspiracy theorists. Now I would say, dear Hunter, no, my MAGA conspiracy theories that you call them now because Russia doesn't work anymore, so now it's MAGA conspiracy theories. Is going to be responsible for all the money that you took in your pockets, and including your very disturbing, because it's disturbing, laptop. We see these people, they're grounded to no values, they're degenerates, morally and, legally criminals, and morally degenerate. And we have to tell things how they are. There is a big value in holding on conservative values today to respond to one and one only leader, which is God, Jesus Christ, which I deeply believe into. And Amen. And they can call me conspiracy theorist, a lunatic, but I believe we're fighting evil. This agenda is evil. And we should stand strong together against this evil agenda, because none of the things they do fall under God's grace by any means. These people are satanic. They're changing our society. They're trying to change our kids. They're trying to teach us that men can be women, women can be men. They want us to celebrate diversity rather than simply accepting it. But, you know, we're twisting society into a degenerate vision, and I think we should stand up against that.
Yeah.
Thank you. So here we are, and we see investigative job. I came to George's life in a very sensitive moment. We've been very under pressure. Now, can pressure break you? Sure. But if you handle it, you remember that pressure makes diamonds. And there is nothing more successful in my life to hold on to my marriage and being proud wife of George Papadopoulos today. So now we are both working in different way to embrace these values and push forward these values. And my work on Ukraine is pretty fascinating. So this speaker we saw in this first film, Andrei Derkach, who was working with Giuliani in this intergovernmental investigation, disappeared for the last 2 years. After he was sanctioned by the United States, after he was victim of an assassination attempt in Ukraine, and after had to basically living in a sort of exile, where he's right now in Belarus, in Minsk, for doing nothing but this press conference you're seeing here, where he was talking about these audio recordings between Biden and Poroshenko, outing Biden wrongdoing in Ukraine. Me and my team achieved to meet with Derkach last month, and we recorded a new interview in Minsk. And this interview is going to be part of a new political film, which is very interesting because it's add evidence of crime we already know, to the evidence of crime we already know, new evidence of crime. There are a few sensational facts that Andrei Derkach revealed to me during this 4 hours long interview in Minsk. And one of them is that our corrupted government turned into a mafia government, which is even more disturbing. There are people who have spoken against Biden who have been victim of assassination attempts, him including. He detailed the circumstances of his fleeing from Ukraine to Minsk, and also he leaked a new piece of documents that uncontrovertibly prove Burisma corruption. Over these 2 years, this very damaging information that Biden tried to dismiss as Russian propaganda has been on the side said, okay, this is all fake. On the other side, Burisma was completely lawful. We have nothing to do. This all Burisma fabrication of money laundering is not true. Well, during this interview, he handed me court orders that have been recently unclassified in Ukraine, in which prove that the infamous bribe that now Hunter is denying also further the arrest of one of the FBI whistleblower was actually documented in a court order in Ukraine. So we're not talking about words, we're talking about real documents, talking about $6 million bribes. So we have these official legal documents. They're not fabricated, they're not manufactured, they're not phony. Every legal document has a record at the court that issued this document. So everybody can go watch it and collect it. So besides the words of Hunter and Joe and all the manipulation of the deep states, here we have witnesses, court order, wire transfers. So he came to the interview with a pile of documents, and he told me, I've been isolated for the last 2 years, but I've been keeping working what I can do, what I've learned to do, which is investigating corruption. He was actually parliamentarian who served 7 times, and he'd been cooperated with eminent prosecutors in Ukraine, including Kulik, which is another prosecutor we didn't hear about yet, but is also target of the deep state. They're trying to silence him in any way. And he leaked the new audio recordings, this time between Shokin, the prosecutor that was fired, and 2 Congress lawyers, American lawyers, Greenberg and Aburisk, in which Shokin says that besides being fired, he has been actually isolated and confined in Ukraine, where he's taken hostage and he fears for his life. So we are talking about somebody sitting with an American journalist for 4 hours, providing a pile of documents, and me stressing to on my X account and every news network for member of the Congress to look into these documents to impeach this crook that is sitting at the White House. Because, you know, information is nothing without accountability. Right. We're not here to talk about how Biden is corrupted. I want to see this Biden removed. Yes. And that's what we need to take back our country. So this is a story with Ukraine where, as Ian was saying, it's not about accusing people of being this and that. Just look into facts with a critical mind and ask ourselves, who is benefiting from this? Who is benefiting from hiding this? Not me, not you, not Donald Trump. There is only one pocket all the money went into, and it's the Biden's family. That's right. But there is only one pocket that is emptied right now because he's in the White House to cover his crimes. It's our pockets. So I invite you to watch this very long interview. I don't want to bore you with the details of name, but thank you. So it's just like a list of very compromising evidence and something that should concern every and each of us, and understand the level of impunity of this family and the level of corruption of our institution covering up for this family, while actually they are indicting Donald Trump, the only leader that loves unconditionally America, who's here to do the job of God in cleaning up this mess. And we have to make sure he's back in power. Yes. Do you have any, please?
You take fire when you're over the target, and it's clear that you both have been over the target for a while. I've got a two-part question. We know that intimidation is the name of the game, and they clearly threatened you guys legally, but have you ever felt physically threatened?
Well, this is a story I would like George to share. This has really happened. We had a hitman at our door a few years ago from Australia. Yes, this was a person that was trying to force himself in our house. And why I know it was a government person is because he was posing as somebody interested in visiting the house to rent it. And to convince me that he had an appointment with George, he showed me a number. This number, a message from George with a number, and the number was exactly the same number as George, with one number changing. So as I have this legal mind eating in all the time, immediately I said, can I take a screenshot? Boom, I screenshot the number and the message. I went to the police, and of course they agreed there was some sort of agency working for accessing our house. Now why? Why he wanted to meet with George? Why this person who, and I have evidence of it, we even filed a report at the time, why this person came into our house. For what, of course. And it was a time where George was exposing, actually, all Australia-related spies down there. He's going to talk about it. But it was a very sensitive time when he was on TV talking about it. And here we have this guy posing as somebody interested into renting our house, showing me a message from George that he never sent, with the same identical number, with one number changing. And thanks God I could make a report about it. And some outlets, the Gateway Pundits, talk about it. But yes, physical threat as well. Fanatics.
And
go ahead.
Second part.
Go ahead and finish, and then we're going to begin the second part of our program. So go ahead and finish.
Okay, so for people who are wanting to come forward to potentially expose corruption or stand in the face of these deep state operatives, you mentioned your faith, but with faith, and what else added to your strength in continuing to stand through all of this?
Well, when you wake up one morning and you read your life rewritten by a bunch of deep state agents who decided to assassinate your character before your body, and you can't hold on to who you are anymore. You have no other choice to speak. And it's character assassination is as brutal sometimes, and it's at the core of a life of somebody. It's his personality, his reputation. When they go after you and they try to target your core essence, who you are, where you come from, what's your intention in life, or what you're involved into, that's pretty brutal. And then you understand there is always a purpose that's bigger than us, that's much bigger than me, much bigger than you and us all together, and it's justice for all. And that's why we should all fight for it.
All right, thank you, everybody. So we're going to begin the second part of our program now. So just give me a second. I'm going to rearrange the stage here. Take this opportunity to grab a drink, if you must, and we'll reconvene in like 2 or 3 minutes, okay? All right, everybody, we're going to begin the second part of our program here. All right, find your seats, conclude your chit-chatting, and we're going to begin our second part now. All righty. So what we're going to do next is we're going to hear from George, and then we'll have a question and answer session. As I said in the beginning of the program, this couple has extensive experience with the deep state. As you know, George Papadopoulos, who worked with the Trump campaign, was the target, one of the original target, I believe, of the Russia collusion hoax. And they were frothing at the mouth, foaming like rabid dogs to try to get some incriminating something out of George Papadopoulos. Fortunately, he stood fast. And I want George to tell us a little bit about that before we dive into the question and answer session. And, just something about both of you that I noticed is that you're dedicated to truth, honor, and justice, and you're uncompromising. And I think we should all take an example from them to be uncompromising in the pursuit of those values, even in the face of the Leviathan. So, George, I'm going to hand it off to you and give us a little background on your story. Really appreciate you both coming here.
Thank you so much. Ian, Mike, I see some old friends, some new friends, and it's actually wonderful to be in New York City among friendly, safe people, because, I'm from Chicago originally, and I've seen what's happened to that once great city because of Democrat policies. We have now migrated to Los Angeles, which is under the scourge of, gruesome Newsom, so that it's facing its own issues out there. And New York, of course, is the epicenter of the world. And to see the New York Young Republican Club put together events like this, and to see people, so interested in the truth and how it's really affecting our country in the future and this election and beyond, for me, it's an honor. So thank you all for even coming out here. Secondly, it's very hard to follow my wife, who just, of course, had an incredible speech, I think, and I'm very proud of her, and I'm a very lucky guy, married up, obviously. So, it's something that I think we could all hope to do in life. It's a wonderful privilege to be with not only a beautiful person, but somebody who's has an amazing heart and soul, and seeks the truth, and that's the most important thing. And I think that you all would agree with something like that. Because at the end of the day, thank you. So I'm just going to keep it short, and we're going to leave a lot of time, I guess, for some questions and answers, because I don't like to bloviate and to talk too much. I really want to hear a lot from you, but I'm going to give you a little spiel, a little summary of what the truth is, right? So between 2011 to 2015, I used to work at a very establishment-type organization in Washington, D.C., called the Hudson Institute. This is a place that basically hired all of the former George W. Bush appointees. Scooter Libby was a colleague. He was Dick Cheney's chief of staff. Trust me, there's a reason I left, but we're going to get to that. It was the only show in town, ladies and gentlemen. There was no MAGA. There was no America First between 2010 2015. The country was in a downward spiral because of both Democrat and Republican policies, okay? So, and I always say to myself, it's not just if you have an R next to your name, vote for somebody like that, because today they are actually some of the worst traitors in Washington, D.C., are the people that you think are there to serve you, but they're actually the ones who are colluding with the Democrats, so. So a lot of these guys, you know, Douglas Feith, you know, one of the architects of the very successful Iraq and Afghanistan wars that sucked, I think, $2 trillion and thousands of lives and destroyed our credibility. You know, so working with these folks who had just literally left the W administration, some worked with Reagan, some worked with his dad, H.W., and I said to myself, this is amazing. It's very interesting being a young guy in Washington with these crowds, but this isn't the future. Just something in me, I said, this cannot be the future. We're going to keep losing. This isn't the direction America should be in. We shouldn't be focusing on forever wars. Basically neoconservative ideology, right? Forever wars, unfair trade, not focusing on the American people, focusing on foreign entities, foreign corporations, foreign governments. You remember the hell that we went through as a country. That's how Obama even came about, right? I mean, how bad did something have to be to bring in a guy like Obama out of nowhere, right? So because it's like, it seems like ancient history, but it's not that long ago. So what happens in the summer of 2015? I'm looking around and I say to them, I want to join presidential campaign politics. The first thing they say to me, oh, we're going to get you in with jab, exclamation points. Oh, both sides, yeah. And, you know, he has an endless pit of money from the super PACs, you know. He's the chosen one, he's the appointed one. And I said, I don't know, I don't like him really, but who else do you have in mind? Oh, you have Marco Rubio. I said, okay, younger, you know, has a little more interesting. But one man came down some escalators that changed my life forever. Do you know who that? And that was Donald Trump. And he comes down. I'm in a very cushy job in D.C. He's coming down. This is a time when the campaign, I think, is 3 people. It's Hope Hicks. I even remember because I reached out to Corey Lewandowski, I think in like June or July of 2015. We're talking, I mean, I'm on the Trump train that long, right? I'm a believer from then. And I reach out to Lewandowski and I say, you know what? I'm George, my background's here, I'm in energy, foreign policy. I think you have a winner, I'd like to join your campaign. Now, I mean, Lewandowski is a household name, but no one knew who this guy was back then. And he says, very interesting, let's stay in touch. So I leave my job in DC, I go into consulting, go to London, doing some energy work out there. And there's another candidate that really strikes me as a potential leader, somebody that epitomizes the American dream, somebody who really pulled himself up from his own bootstraps, which I really appreciate, wasn't born and raised with a golden spoon in his mouth. And that was Ben Carson. Who likes Ben Carson here? So I end up joining Ben Carson's presidential campaign first. So I'm on Ben Carson's campaign at a time when he was actually the only candidate who led in the polls at one point. It wasn't Trump A to Z. Carson actually, for a short time, led in those polls. And the reason he led is because he became infamous from the prayer breakfast when he attacked Obama. Do you guys remember that? And he's a genius. And he comes from nothing, except he believes in hard work, family, and God, just like Simona was talking about. So I'm on the doctor's campaign for 3 months. He's doing well. There's a terrorist attack that hits Belgium. This is at a time when Simona was actually working at the European Parliament. And it was at that moment I said, we need a tougher guy. America needs somebody tough. We're dealing with ISIS. Remember ISIS before the caliphate was destroyed? I mean, that's ancient history because Trump took care of them. But back then, they were cutting journalists' heads off. We were terrified of them. You had, of course, the border situation was, dangerous. You had China ripping us off. You had jobs being outsourced. You remember what we were going through. So Carson drops out, and his team says, we're going to probably make some endorsements. And who does Ben Carson end up endorsing? Where does that 10 to 12% of the electorate go? And basically dooms Ted Cruz's campaign. That's when he endorsed Trump, and that's what I think personally tilted the balance of power in the 2016 election, was that Ben Carson endorsement. And then you had Iowa afterwards, and then Trump just gained momentum after Ted Cruz, and that was the end of Ted Cruz. So after this happens, I joined Trump's campaign in March of 2016. Now, why is this all important? Why am I bringing up this background? Why am I talking about Ben Carson as well? Why am I talking about Trump? Because I want to bring it to the current day reality of what just happened 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, there was a bombshell story that the CIA, with the help of foreign intelligence groups like the United Kingdom, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, Italy, and potentially other countries, were involved in what was tantamount to a criminal conspiracy to spy on the Trump campaign and subvert our democratic process. One of those 26 individuals that was on that list that was spied on, bumped into by the global intelligence deep state was me. Another was Ben Carson. So you could understand that they were not just spying on Trump's campaign. They weren't just sabotaging Trump's campaign. They were looking at anybody who posed a threat to Obama's third term, which was Hillary Clinton. Obama had to conspire and collude with these governments. And this is all public. You can simply Google what I'm talking about. This isn't conspiracy stuff. This is New York Post. This is Matt Taibbi. This is Schellenberger. This was all over the place in case somebody didn't see it 2 weeks ago. And the journalists who released this story, they're not conservatives. They're not Daily Caller people. They're not Gateway pundit. These are like hardcore liberals who just don't want to see America turn into a police state. So that's why it was very important to get that information out to the world to see. Because the old narrative was, remember the old narrative? Heroes, Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, James Comey, launch a fully justified investigation because our allies abroad and Christopher Steele were investigating probable cause of some sort of collusion between Trump and Russia. We now know that first of all, was all fake, and that they created the pretext themselves using the intel community to launch investigations. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the biggest political scandal of modern history. It not only involves corruption domestically, it involves corruption globally. How now, with this information, and I wrote a book about this, I've been talking about this since 2018, but at the time when Simona and I were talking about this, so many people said, oh, he got in trouble, he's just trying to deflect, he's crazy. Seriously, that's what a lot of people were saying. There were only some like Rush Limbaugh. You guys like Rush? I bring up Rush Limbaugh because he really didn't give a lot of interviews, but he gave me an interview. And I sat down with him for over an hour, and he was getting into some of these details. He was like, there's something not adding up here. This doesn't look right. This isn't justified. The FBI's crooked. And after that, then Trump started saying, Spygate, they spied on my campaign. So it was by having Simona initially go public on shows like George Stephanopoulos, Hannity, Tucker Carlson, every like global media that would sit with her, and she started to talk about the setup. Then Rush Limbaugh, Hannity started interviewing me. Then Trump put two and two together. He said they spied on my campaign. And personally, I think that saved his first term. That really, if he did not, thank you. If he didn't go on offense at a time when Comey was framing him in the Oval Office, remember the infamous meeting with Comey and Trump before he fired him? If Trump was listening to the intel agents that were framing him, to Comey, to whatever was going on, he would have probably been convicted for some fake charge. I have no idea what they were planning for him, because I know they were planning a lot worse for me and for General Flynn. They sent Paul Manafort to prison for 2 years. They wanted Roger Stone to go to prison for 3 years. So they had very evil plans here. And we fought back against it. And the way we fought back against it is by being vocal, by sticking to the truth, loving our country, and not having fear of any blowback. And that's something that when I see Trump today, because I'm trying to bring this into today, fighting against lawfare, it's just more overt now. In 2016, it was subtle because the world wasn't ready for this stuff. The world was not ready for a president being indicted, a home of a president being raided. But we woke people up, I think, by exposing a lot of this stuff. Liberal journalists are now all on it. Newsmax has been absolutely incredible. Some other channels have been, getting the truth out there. And if it wasn't for channels like Newsmax, others, I don't think we'd have a country today. I think history would have been rewritten. I think all of this that we're even talking about, including what Simona was just talking about regarding Ukraine corruption, would have been swept underneath the rug of history. Jim Comey would have been viewed as a hero, not a scumbag traitor that he is. And Brennan and Obama would be viewed as the cleanest, heroic, successful presidents, scandal-free, that took down what they were trying to paint Trump as. You remember what they were trying to paint him as. So that's why being engaged, being knowledgeable, being focused, especially during an election year, is so critical, ladies and gentlemen, because the media controls the narrative. They don't want you to know the truth. They're out for themselves. They're out for the special interests. They're out for their bottom line, and they're out to protect the intel agencies. And that's something that struck fear into me when I saw that type of collusion. I thought that was all conspiracy stuff. Remember, I come from like an establishment background, right? And then I walk into this kind of stuff, and it woke me up very quickly. So I'm just fascinated right now with Trump's resilience. And I think we should all really applaud what he's going through and stick with him, because if they can do it to him, they could do it to any of you. And I wanted just to kind of give that little background, how it's affecting today, and if we have time for some questions and answers, I'd love to hear your questions and be engaged. Thank you so much.
Just real quick. All right, so for questions, I would like for everybody just to say their name before they make their question. Also, it's not time for your manifesto or to talk about, let's just suffice to say, keep it concise and on topic and make it a question. So we'll just go for as long as it feels good, but I do want to make the first question, just because I have a little bit of privilege here. Is what you have uncovered with the corruption that we see, and there's a legal expression called "you know it when you see it," right? So some people might disagree about when something crosses the line, right? But and this is not a hard and fast legal rule, but you know it when you see it. You know when something is over the line. And so when we find something like Hunter Biden's corruption or the Biden family corruption, and we can sense it, and they'd love for us not to believe our lying eyes and ears. How far does this extend? I mean, it seems like it just could be the surface level of corruption. How much largesse? How much have the American people been taken advantage of and took for fools in this decadent ruling class that we have put so much trust into and put so much hope into? Do you think that this is just the beginning? And I'll give it to Simona. She's been lovely tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Anna. Well, this is a very, very pertinent question, and I would say that what we see today is only the, the top of the iceberg, but underneath There is so much that supported what we're seeing today. But again, you said something, I don't believe it until I see it. And I belong to the ones who has been a little skeptical, always like I need to dig into that and look at evidence myself and talk to this witness and vet the authenticity of what has been said. And that's what I did, and that's what I shared. And then I found out that other people have access to this information, but they're not doing anything about it. And then we go to the depth of the corruption. It's not only what we didn't see and what we're seeing now, is about which apparatus is still covering up for it, and this apparatus is the deep state. And Biden is only the puppet of it. But let's remember Hillary Clinton, Obama, George Soros, and many others.
Anyone who wishes to ask a question?
I have a question. My name's Ann. Do you have any opinions on Mitch McConnell, who seems to have just affirmed Donald Trump? Angela Chow was a friend of mine, and I'm convinced she was murdered. But this whole Tesla thing backing into a fund. Anyway, Mitch McConnell, do you have any opinions?
Yeah, sorry to hear about that, because it's a very strange situation that happened. You're talking about the sister-in-law.
Yeah, exactly.
A very bizarre situation. Regarding McConnell, I think McConnell represents a party that no longer exists. I think you could see that in the amnesty bill. I call it the amnesty bill, not the border bill, that he tried to push through about 3 weeks ago, in which a couple, I think 6 senators or something, subscribed to. And McConnell was the leader of that attempt to basically rush some bad deal. And you saw how the MAGA movement, the American people, the Republican Party said flat out, no, we're not dealing with you. We're done with your policies, your ideas. So that was like a profound indictment on his leadership. He just came out and endorsed Trump. After Haley dropped out, what's he going to do? He's the minority leader in the Senate, obviously. He had to do something. He's vying for political power. He's likely resigning. And I just think that moving forward, as I said earlier, it's not just about the R's. It's about the type of R's you send to Washington, D.C. And that's something that I think Trump, if he gets elected, is really going to need in 26 in the midterms to ensure that he has a helping hand to implement his agenda domestically and abroad and not be handcuffed not only by the FBI and the deep state like we talked about, but by his own so-called colleagues like he was in 16. So.
I have a question.
Oh.
Yeah. So I understand that when you felt like your life was in danger, you had a responsibility not only to protect yourself and to protect your family. With the information that you had and how damning it was to the individuals that it was about, what safeguards were you focusing on obtaining and sustaining so that you could continue your work that obviously needed to happen while maintaining the safety of everyone around you? Like what steps did you feel like you needed to take? And I don't want details, right? Because I might need them. But what steps did you take?
If you were asking if we got a gun, legally I could have known one back. Legally, for some time I couldn't, but now I'm pardoned, obviously, by the president. It's something I'm obviously grateful for. So, thank you. I'm a Second Amendment absolutist. I think it's the best thing that secures our rights in America. And you see any time that people lose their rights to their gun, what happens? You have millions of people killed by their own government. And it's, if you look from China to European countries, Vietnam, Cambodia, African nations, the list goes on. So I couldn't have a gun, but what I did have was a really resilient, fighting, beautiful Italian goddess over here. That had my 6, as I say, and seriously, it was really about keeping our circle very small, not trusting a lot of people, because it's one thing to talk about what we're talking about now. After a lot's been out, a lot of declassified information, this report that I just referenced, my congressional testimony, others, she's testified to Congress. But it's another when you're at the incipient stage, exposing what came out to a global operation to take down a president and to interfere in our democracy, which, like I said, there's no bigger political scandal in modern history by far. You cannot allow the CIA with foreign intelligence to determine who's going to choose your president, because that's what they were trying to do. Okay, so Simona and she referenced this Australian guy. And why would this guy come to the house? It was at a time when I was saying that Australia was involved in framing Trump. Then Trump actually had a meeting with the Australians. He started asking questions, and they were feeling the heat. This is public. I mean, Trump, it was like before a trip he had to Japan. I was on Fox News like the day before, and I said it. And then he did a press conference on right about to go to Japan, and he said, I want to know what Australia was up to. This is 2018, 2019 we're talking about. I want to know what Australia was up to. I want to know what the UK was up to. Ukraine. This is public. Google. You go on YouTube, you'll see him talking about it. So the moment you have the president listening to some new information that goes against the narrative, and then they don't want to get caught. You think Comey wanted to get fired? You think Peter Strzok wanted to resign and, to be fired in disgrace? Do you think that their boss, Charles McGonigal, wanted to go to 6 years in prison that he was just sentenced to? Did you know that? I don't know if anybody knew that. Last month, the guy who actually initiated Crossfire Hurricane, Charles McGonigal, he was the head of counterintelligence here at the New York office of the FBI, was just sentenced to 6 years in prison. Do you know why? For colluding with Russians.
Treason.
So do you think that they wanted this stuff to come out? Do you think he wants to sit in prison for 6 years while he was the head of the FBI? Do you think that Brennan now wants to be exposed for having the CIA interfere in domestic politics? Do you think Obama wants his fingerprints on this? Of course they wanted me out of the picture. They wanted Simona not talking. They don't want Trump talking. That's what they were trying to cover up. So, I'm not trying to sound dramatic, but I'm serious. You know, what we were dealing with here is like serious stuff with a lot of dangerous people. These people would not hesitate to kill you or me or anybody in this room to cover up their corruption.
My last question is, where did you put that faith to be able to move forward and continue the information that you had to disseminate?
It's called 2 Timothy 1:7, my friend. And you know what's like? And God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and sound mind. I always would reference that passage, and I would say, if that's what God's telling me, why should I be in fear? As long as I know who I am, Simona knows who she is, we know the truth is on our side. It'll come out. The truth always comes out eventually. So that's really what kept me grounded at a time, and Simona I want her to definitely explain her side of this too, at a time when we were offered a lot of silver. I'll use another biblical, not to stay quiet, to actually be part of the conspiracy.
Wow.
To be part of the, hey, we'll make you a millionaire, John Dean #2 with a good-looking wife. You're going to overthrow a president. You're young. We'll give you a movie deal. Just lie a little bit. You were colluding, weren't you? Come on, Trump. Come on, you were doing this. No, I said no, and you could actually see it in an interview I did with George Stephanopoulos where he's hammering me. I'm like, no, that's not what happened.
I remember.
So before that interview, we were being like buttered up. You're going to come on, you're going to go on national TV at a time when Trump is already, feeling the blows, one more punch and he was probably out. And I said, nah, we're going to stick to the truth. We're going to go on national television in front of 5 million people and just stick with it. So
No, you said it perfectly. It's all about having the faith in God and facing things without fear. But it's true that we were offered everything, literally from movie roles, $1 million movie roles, from TV shows, trying to flatter everything they could offer. And me and George, we always been loyal to the truth. And I always say that we are loyal to the truth. We'll never come up from my mouth lies or deceits, and never did him. No matter the pressure, no matter how broke we were, because we were not in a great situation. So we were really standing our ground and trying to, walk through the fire. But there is something, at least that I experienced myself. When you have faith, you always see the light at the end of the tunnel. And there is no one single moment in which I felt God had abandoned us. I always felt at the right time God would come and give us an opportunity, a way to move on the right path. And there is also something my grandmother always used to tell me. And she said, watch out, when the devil wants your soul, it's smiling.
Yeah.
This gentleman here. Denzel Monk, News Christian View, and Probe Analysis. You mentioned in your talk about the role that media played in propagating this corruption. And my question to you is, we have Newsmax, you mentioned Newsmax, we have Epoch Times, we have Daily Wire, we have some very good news media, but they're not legacy media. Do you think it's important for us to have a location we can go, like a one-stop shop website where it has all of our kind of media, the right kind of media we can go to? Because people don't seem to know where to go to get the information, and that's why they're so successful. So are you aware of any kind of one-stop location we can go to get all of that kind of information, that people can get the right news and they won't be as successful, at least to convince us of people like you being corrupt? Thanks.
Professor? So both of us.
Well, in my view, well, in my view, you definitely should look for your information and vet your sources. But I will let George answer to you. Because
Okay, so the media is becoming decentralized. We're not. Huh? He said crypto. Look, I mean, I remember when I was, in high school, just starting college, I would sit at home till like 8 p.m. waiting for Bill O'Reilly. I don't do that anymore. I mean, a lot of people aren't doing it, especially younger generations. And I get a lot of my media info from Newsmax. Because I work with them as well, and I love Newsmax. I've been with them over 3.5 years now, and Mike, and just doing incredible things, and at a time when they've been taking a lot of heat too. So they're highly recommend you watch Newsmax. It's unfiltered, unbiased, fact-oriented. X or Twitter is very cool. I get a lot of my media on X because I like to follow. First of all, it's like being in a symposium like this, but from your bedroom, right? Because you could like go on a space, you could go on like a live stream, you get a tweet or whatever it's called now immediately, and you know what that person is thinking. You get real info from real sources. So X, Newsmax, stick with those for now, and then keep going.
All right, so Mike Carter. All right, George, as someone who's worked on the Trump campaign in the past, we know it's going to be Biden versus Trump come November. That's pretty much certain right now. What does Donald Trump need to do to gain the support of Nikki Haley voters, as well as those disaffected Biden supporters, those Biden Democrats? And how could a potential VP pick help with that? And Simona, I would be interested in your comments on what Trump can do to continue making gains with suburban women.
Do you want to start with the suburban women?
Well, first of all, I believe that Donald Trump has always been the most pro-women president and man in the United States. The number of women he has put in incredible places, and the trust he has in women, and the way he relied on women figures all over, even in his business. Back on time, we had this engineer from the Trump Tower was a woman. It was unheard of. We're talking about the 80s. So back on time where machismo was much more, in the air, Donald Trump understood the power of women brain, women determination, women's strength. And as a woman, I feel empowered so much better about Donald Trump being there. Then does he like women? Yes, because he's a man, and we like men who likes men. Joe Biden likes kids, so. That's disgusting.
Just to follow up, Mike, I think, so cabinet positions are very important, right? But I would rank Trump's attorney general pick as even higher than his VP pick because of the lawfare, the two-tier justice of system, and the corruption from within the United States. We were talking about this earlier. I mean, we'll always have foes abroad, right? We'll have Russia, we'll have Iran, we'll have China, we'll have maybe even some non-existent countries today that in 20 years become superpowers. We don't know. And we could deal with them because we're the superior military, our economy's incredible, we have human capital that makes this country wonderful, and we're in a geographically safe position, right? When you have Canada, well, not Mexico right now with the border, but you're not dealing like those countries are. So I think who he chooses for his attorney general has to be a bulldog. The first thing he has to go out and say, or she has to, because it could be a woman, and women are tougher than us, at the end of the day. So they go out, say that we're going to deal with this deep state from within. We're going to prosecute these Soros-funded prosecutors are going out and creating chaos in the legal system, and then we're going to do our own investigation into corruption and bribery and all that Simona was describing here.
Yes.
Then as VP. Now, you might all think I'm biased, but maybe I'm just smart. Ben Carson for VP. And the reason I say it is not just because I like him at a personal level. Trump has to learn the lessons of Washington. In many ways, Washington ate him the first term. He has to go in eating Washington the second term. So when you're looking at your most revered cabinet picks and your inner circle, what are you looking at? You're looking at people who are loyal and competent.
That's right.
And Ben Carson was an incredible Secretary of HUD. He's probably the most loyal guy that's been next to him since 16. He's endorsed him, obviously. He's on the campaign trail. I think he's very articulate. He could bring in various different type of voters that might have shunned Trump, including minority groups. I think it's very important, especially as America's changing. I think it's, we have to start looking at the future too, of what kind of candidates we want, what kind of, backgrounds we want too. I'm not saying, I don't believe in identity politics at all, because I don't think Ben Carson fits into that mold. Ben Carson created himself from nothing. So just to be clear. So I think that would be very wise. And I think regarding Nikki Haley supporters, where are they? I mean, most of her, most of the people that were voting for her in the primary were Democrat registered people. She was just the useful idiot in many ways of the Democrats.
An expensive idiot.
And we're done with that. She should have known what time it was in America, and she didn't, and now she's going to suffer consequences. I think where her career's probably over. So I just think that's kind of where he should be focusing in. I think he's going to make the right choices, and he's going to attract many millions more people than even 16 in 2020 if he just keeps fighting.
Last question. Don, Valencia.
Don has a question.
Don
Don has a question.
Well, if you have further questions, you can also inquire at the afterwards. So we didn't get Brad last Don.
He's the boss.
John, ask a question.
All right.
That'd be
So
good.
this is something I've been wondering, just as someone who's from the outside in, and I frequently notice. I think I'd like to hear both of your opinions. When someone thinks of the deep state, this isn't some brand new thing. It's obviously existed since post World War II. Eisenhower warned about this. Patton was killed because of this, and I've noticed, at least again from my perspective, and I think many people here might agree, the deep state, the levers of power, people like George Soros, Hillary Clinton. I mean, they're not very young people, right? They are of an advanced age. Let's be nice. And the people who are succeeding them are not very competent, to say the very least. They're very dull and kind of dim-witted. You look at people like a Hillary Clinton. She destroyed nations. She annihilated populations. You can't call her incompetent, and you couldn't call her stupid. Versus the people we're getting now, and I guess I'm just wondering, is that something you've also noticed? Because when you notice a state lashing out at such a debased and kind of forward-facing front, right in your face, it's also a sign not just of how brazen they've become, but of how much less tact and intelligence they have. So I just wanted to see if you guys see that as well.
Well, are we turning into idiocracy? That's probably a very telling parody of what we experience now. Yes, I think the Soros game was to take away critical thinking. The smarter you are, the most critical you are. So placing incompetent idiots is the end of the game. As you say, like, yes, Hillary Clinton is stupid. No. Is incompetent? No, she's evil.
Yeah.
Yes, she was fulfilling an evil agenda, but doing it as a pro. Well, now I agree with you. It's on display, and it's a bunch of people that they don't even know what they stand for. They've been brainwashed by this old fox, as you said, and I'm being less diplomatically correct than you, like Soros and all his circle. And to be emboldened. You know, when you embolden and put in power position an idiot is the worst. Because the idiot is easily emboldened, so they don't understand. They feel
Like
power,
Zelensky.
but no responsibility. So I think society managed by fools is the worst. It's the most dangerous one, and that's what we should avoid. Actually, promoting education of critical thinking, to disagree, to even say, okay, this is Hillary Clinton, but at least I can respect her brain. But when we have in power a bunch of incompetent people, it's exactly what this old fox wanted to. Easy to manipulate, and stupid enough to feel the power without the responsibility of the power. That's my opinion.
No, I mean, I agree with everything that Simona just said. I think she summarized exactly the situation that we're in. You're absolutely right. A lot of these, the head of the snake is getting older, but still it's rattling at the very bottom, and it's not going to go down unless DC is cleaned from within.
Yes.
You know what Cicero, the famous Roman orator, said?
Yes.
He said that corruption from within is much more dangerous than any enemy from outside of ancient Rome. So the only way that we're going to be able to the only way that you're going to clean this system is by the top, and that's why who Trump chooses, I think he's going to end up being president. So I'm just assuming. And that's why, so many, in previous elections, it was, who is his VP? I'm looking at who's his AG? Who's his CIA director? Who's his FBI director? What are the names he's floating for these positions? Because as we saw with Mueller, Comey, Brennan, that corrupt snakehead at top corrupted an entire institution, and they protected the institution, not the Constitution, as a result. So you change the top, you get people in there who are patriotic and abide by the Constitution. From there on, you will see a change, I think, for the better, both domestically and abroad. So it really starts at the top, and it all starts from how Trump chooses these people moving forward.
All right, thank you everybody for coming. That concludes our program for this evening. If you have further questions, please just direct them after. So thank you so much. Thank you for coming.